Today we are going to journey into the remarkable story of the 1962 1-cent coin, a humble Lincoln penny that in its rarest and most unusual forms can be worth up to $4 million because of the extraordinary errors, mistakes, and unexpected quirks that have occurred during its minting process. And in this long exploration we will uncover why this specific year's cent can be so valuable. What makes it special compared to the billions of other pennies struck in circulation, what kinds of errors exist, how collectors search for them, what possibilities and variations have been discovered or theorized, and how such an unassuming coin can turn into a life-changing treasure. Because when we look back at the 1962 1-cent coin, we are not just talking about copper, dies, presses, or mint marks, but also about history, accidents, human oversight, technological imperfections, and the unrelenting curiosity of those who study coins with incredible attention to detail. And in this story, the journey begins with the United States Mint in the early 1960s, a time when Lincoln cents were still being made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, a composition that had been in place for decades since the early 1909 introduction of the Lincoln cent, and by 1962 the Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing massive numbers of these coins. Hundreds of millions, in fact, intended for everyday commerce, never designed to be special or rare, yet within this gigantic production run there were mistakes, small oversights, die clashes, doubled dies, repunched mint marks, misalignments, and planchet errors that unknowingly created unique pieces, each one of them a survivor of a manufacturing accident, and these survivors today are what collectors hunt for and pay astronomical sums for. Because the rarity of error coins is magnified when one considers how many perfect or ordinary coins exist compared to how few flawed ones manage to escape into circulation without being caught and destroyed by mint workers. So when we talk about a 1962 1-cent that could fetch $4 million, we are diving into the very heart of rarity and error collecting, where a single coin can stand out as a singular marvel. And so let us begin by considering the types of errors and mistakes that could elevate such a coin into legendary status. Starting with doubled die obverse errors, which occur when the coin die itself has been impressed twice at slightly different angles with the master design, causing features such as Lincoln's profile, his eye, his beard, or the inscriptions like Liberty and I in God We Trust to appear doubled, sometimes strongly visible to the naked eye and sometimes only under magnification. And in the world of coin collecting, dramatic doubled dies are considered holy grails. With examples like the 1955 doubled die penny or the 1969 doubled die cent already commanding massive values. So if a 1962 doubled die of equally strong and dramatic nature exists, and especially if it is in pristine uncirculated condition, it could easily command millions of dollars at auction, because collectors would recognize it as a unique major variety comparable to those already famous coins. And then we must consider repunched mint marks, which were particularly common in the era before the 1990s when mint marks were individually punched into working dies by hand. So on a 1962 D cent, for example, the D could appear doubled, tripled, or skewed due to the repunching process. And while minor repunched mint marks might only bring modest premiums, there are known cases where dramatic repunches, like a completely misaligned D showing in two places, can cause intense bidding wars among collectors, so a particularly bold and unique repunched mint mark from 1962 could be part of the story of a multimillion-dollar cent. And then we must think about die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of the reverse design on the obverse die or vice versa. And when such dies continue to strike planchets, they create coins with unusual phantom images, such as parts of the Lincoln Memorial appearing behind Lincoln's bust or fragments of lettering appearing where they don't belong. And these are highly collectible, especially when dramatic and well-centered, and if a 1962 die clash happened in such a rare, strong, and distinctive way that no other coins survived from that die pairing, then it too could elevate the coin's value to astronomical levels. And then we must examine off-center strikes, where the planchet fails to align correctly with the dies, leading to coins with missing portions of design and blank areas. And depending on how off-center the strike is, collectors often pay significantly more for these. particularly when a large part of the design remains visible along with the date and mint mark, and in some cases, off-center strikes are so dramatic yet still leave the year legible that they become centerpiece coins. So imagine a 1962 cent struck 80% off-center with a perfectly bold date and mint mark still visible. Such a coin would certainly attract enormous attention. And then there are broadstrikes, where the collar die fails and the coin spreads wider than normal, and striking on foreign planchets or transitional metals, which sometimes happened when blanks from other coinage were accidentally fed into the presses, leading to cents struck on dime planchets, or foreign coin stock, or in rare cases leftover experimental planchets. And in 1962 there were millions of planchets being processed, and any slip of the wrong blank into the coining chamber could have produced a one-of-a-kind rarity. A penny struck on a silver dime blank, for example, lighter in weight, and with a distinctive ring when tapped, could easily become a multimillion-dollar treasure, especially if authenticated and graded by a major grading service. And then we come to the possibility of mule errors, which are among the rarest of all mint mistakes, where an obverse die and a reverse die from different coin denominations are accidentally paired, leading to coins that should not exist, such as a penny obverse struck with a dime reverse. And while extremely rare, if such a mule error exists for the 1962 cent, it would immediately rank among the most valuable errors in American coinage history, perhaps explaining a multimillion-dollar price tag. And of course, beyond the technical minting errors, there is the factor of condition, because in coin collecting, quality matters immensely, and a 1962 cent that has survived in pristine gem mint state, with blazing original red color, no scratches, no spots, and full sharp strike, could by itself be worth thousands, but when combined with a major dramatic error, the coin's value could skyrocket into the millions. Especially if it is the only known example of its kind, because collectors are willing to pay record-breaking sums for unique specimens, and auction history shows us countless examples where a coin sells far beyond anyone's expectations simply because it is the finest known or the only known. And so when we talk about a 1962 penny worth $4 million, it is likely a perfect storm of factors, an incredible error or combination of errors, matched with impeccable preservation, verified authenticity, strong demand, and intense competition among wealthy collectors. And these are not just fantasies, because we have seen other coins achieve similar status, such as the 1913 Liberty Nickel, the 1933 Double Eagle, or rare double die cents that have achieved six-figure and even seven-figure prices. And the lore of the 1962 penny continues to inspire treasure hunters to look closely at their pocket change, to search through jars of old coins, to peer at every date, mint mark, and detail under magnification, hoping to spot that one anomaly, that one flaw that could turn an ordinary cent into a legendary multimillion-dollar collectible. And as we imagine the possibilities, we must also consider the human element behind these mistakes. The mint workers who in 1962 were using heavy presses, inspecting dies, punching mint marks, and handling vast numbers of planchets, often under pressure to meet quotas and production demands. And in those conditions small oversights could easily occur, an extra punch of the mint mark, a misaligned planchet, a die not properly annealed, or a foreign planchet slipping into the hopper, and each of those human and mechanical missteps contributes to the possibility of a rarity being born. And what makes it even more fascinating is that most of these coins went unnoticed at the time, circulating for years before collectors with sharper eyes began pulling them out, and today, decades later, the survivors have become incredibly scarce and highly sought after. And as we think about the immense journey from minting presses in 1962 to multimillion-dollar auction halls in the 21st century, we realize that every tiny era coin carries with it a story of survival, chance, oversight, and discovery. And that story is what captivates collectors and justifies the enormous values. And so the 1962 1 cent worth $4 million is not merely about metal and minting, but about history, rarity. Now we shift our attention to another incredible piece of numismatic history, the 1974 1 cent coin, a coin that in its most extraordinary and rare forms can reach values as high as $3 million because of the unusual errors, fascinating mistakes, and unexpected minting experiments that took place during that year, making it one of the most talked about modern-era Lincoln cents. And while billions of regular copper pennies were struck in 1974, it was also a year of immense transition at the United States Mint because of rising copper prices, which led officials to experiment with new materials and strike coins on planchets other than the usual bronze composition. And these experiments and the chaotic environment of the mid-1970s created opportunities for rare variants and striking mistakes to slip into existence, and those survivors have become multimillion-dollar rarities today, with some of the most famous examples being the 1974 aluminum cents, which were struck in extremely limited numbers at the Philadelphia Mint as test pieces to evaluate whether aluminum could replace copper as the primary composition for pennies. And while the idea was eventually abandoned, a handful of these experimental aluminum cents escaped into the hands of individuals outside the mint, whether given to members of Congress or taken by employees. And decades later, these survivors have become legendary rarities, some seized by the government, others appearing briefly in auctions, and whenever one surfaces, it sends shockwaves through the coin collecting community, because such a coin represents not only a minting anomaly but also a tangible relic of a pivotal moment in U.S. monetary history. And while the aluminum cents are at the heart of the 1974 story, they are not the only possibility for a multimillion-dollar valuation. Because 1974 also saw numerous errors in the regular copper cent production, including doubled dies where the date, inscriptions, or Lincoln's profile could show dramatic doubling, off-center strikes leaving large blank areas yet preserving the full date, broadstrikes spreading the coin beyond its normal diameter, die clashes imprinting faint outlines of the memorial on Lincoln's bust or vice versa, and repunched mint marks, particularly on Denver minted cents where the D was applied by hand and sometimes shows strong doubling or tripling. And any of these errors in dramatic form, preserved in pristine condition, could command significant sums, with the rarest examples approaching seven-figure valuations. But what truly propels the 1974 cent into the $3 million range is the combination of its experimental background with extremely limited survival of rare types. So when one of these aluminum cents surfaces, and is paired with the fact that it is unique, or among only a handful known, collectors with immense resources are willing to pay staggering prices to secure such a historic piece, because beyond the technical aspects of minting errors, the 1974 aluminum cent embodies a what-if scenario in American coinage, a symbol of a road not taken, and that alone makes it desirable beyond measure. But we cannot ignore that even the copper cents from 1974 can harbor valuable secrets, and for the average collector searching through rolls of coins or inherited jars of change, the chance of finding a rare double die or repunched mint mark is still real. And while these may not command multimillion-dollar values, they represent exciting discoveries nonetheless, yet the possibility always lingers that some unknown variant of 1974 cent, perhaps struck on a foreign planchet or a transitional blank, lies hidden somewhere waiting to be uncovered, and such a discovery could easily rewrite the price guides and auction records, pushing its value into the realm of millions. And when we reflect on why the 1974 penny can reach such extraordinary prices, we realize it is not just about rarity and error alone, but also about narrative, about how each of these coins tells a story of change, uncertainty, experimentation, and human oversight within the minting process. And that story is what fuels desire among collectors who want not just a piece of metal but a piece of history that only a handful of others can ever own. And so the 1974 1 cent worth $3 million stands as one of the most fascinating examples of how a common object transforms into a priceless treasure when touched by rarity, error, and historical significance. And just like with the 1962 cent, this story inspires everyone to take a closer look at the coins in their possession, to examine each date carefully, to study mint marks under magnification, to weigh coins to check for unusual compositions, because you never know when you might stumble upon that one piece of history that has the power to change your life forever. And this thrill of possibility is the heartbeat of numismatics, and the 1974 penny is a shining reminder that even the most ordinary cent in your hand may hide a secret worth millions. Now move to another incredible journey into the hidden treasures of small pocket change that can transform into life-changing discoveries. And today we are going to dive into the remarkable story of the 2002 1-cent coin, a Lincoln cent that in certain extraordinary cases has been valued at up to $1 million because of rare minting errors, unusual mistakes, and the fascinating quirks of production that took place at the Denver Mint during that year. And while on the surface the 2002 penny might look like just another ordinary coin made of copper-plated zinc, struck by the billions for everyday circulation, what lies beneath the surface is a world of numismatic intrigue where even the smallest variation can turn an ordinary cent into a treasure chest of fortune. And the story of this coin begins with the minting process itself, because by 2002 the Lincoln cent was well into its zinc era, having been switched from copper to a core of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating. Since 1982, and this composition introduced all kinds of new possibilities for errors. As plating sometimes failed, planchets could be flawed, and striking problems could create coins with unusual appearances or structural oddities. And at the Denver Mint, which produced hundreds of millions of pennies that year, even the smallest mistake could have resulted in a coin slipping into circulation with features so unusual that collectors today clamor to acquire them at astounding prices. And among the types of errors known on 2002 cents are off-center strikes, where the planchet is not properly seated between the dies and part of the design is missing while a blank crescent remains, and the most dramatic of these with more than half the coin blank yet still showing the date and mint mark are highly collectible, sometimes fetching thousands, and when such an error is extreme, unique, and preserved in pristine uncirculated condition, the value could soar even higher. Than there are broadstrikes where the retaining collar fails and the coin spreads wider than normal, retaining its full design but appearing distorted, and there are double strikes where the planchet is struck more than once, leaving overlapping designs, some of which can be so dramatic that they transform the look of the coin entirely, and collectors will pay enormous premiums for bold double strikes, especially when the date and mint mark are still clear. And then there are die cracks and die breaks, sometimes forming dramatic raised lines across Lincoln's face or the fields of the coin, sometimes even resulting in what collectors call cuds, where a portion of the design is missing because a piece of the die broke away. And these unusual coins often gain colorful nicknames and can become highly sought after. And then there is the possibility of wrong planchet strikes, which are among the most exciting errors, where a Lincoln cent obverse and reverse are struck on a blank intended for a dime, nickel, or even a foreign coin, and when authenticated, such coins become truly rare, because they combine an impossible composition with the familiar Lincoln design. And in 2002, with vast numbers of foreign planchets and blanks circulating through U.S. mints for various coinage projects, the chance for one to slip into the presses was real, and any surviving examples are worth staggering sums, sometimes reaching into 6 or 7 figures depending on condition and rarity. And one can imagine a 2002 cent struck on a dime planchet, lighter in weight, smaller in diameter, with the design partially missing, selling for astronomical prices. And then there are mule errors, the rarest of all, where dies from 2 different denominations are paired together by mistake, such as a penny obverse struck with the reverse of a dime or state quarter, and while extremely rare, if such an error were confirmed for the 2002 penny, its value would unquestionably reach into the $1 million range because it would represent a unique and extraordinary minting accident. And beyond the errors themselves, condition remains king in coin collecting, and coins preserved in pristine mint state red condition, certified and graded by top services, always attract more bidders and higher prices. And so when we imagine a 2002 penny worth $1 million, it is the combination of a dramatic, unique error with impeccable preservation and the thrill of owning something that virtually no one else in the world possesses. And what makes this coin even more intriguing is the modern context, because many people today dismiss pennies as virtually worthless in daily life, often tossing them aside or leaving them in jars, yet hidden among these seemingly valueless coins could be one with a mistake so dramatic that it is worth more than houses, cars, or even entire collections. And that is why the 2002 cent stands as a powerful reminder to always check your change, to never overlook the smallest details, because the tiniest flaw in a small coin can turn into the greatest financial surprise. And just like the great rarities before it, the 2002 D-cent valued at $1 million represents the perfect storm of rarity, error, demand, and condition, a story of how imperfection creates perfection in the eyes of collectors, and how something as humble as a penny can transform into a priceless artifact of minting history, inspiring collectors everywhere to look closer, search harder, and dream bigger, because the next discovery might still be hiding in plain sight.